It was my first day at work at the company. I introduced myself in front of all the employees. I am Mark Johnson, who will be serving as the exclusive writer. In the middle of my self-introduction, I found myself at a loss for words. Unbelievably, the woman I thought I would never see again was standing right before me. What? Why is Susan here? As I widened my eyes in surprise, Susan also widened her eyes. I never dreamed that I would ever meet my ex-wife, who I divorced 2 years ago, in this way. My name is Mark Johnson. I am a divorced man turning 30 this year. Since my divorce last year, I have been living alone. My ex-wife Susan was a wonderful woman, 3 years older than me. She was very beautiful, youthful enough to make me look much older, yet her inner self was very calm. We met at a mixer and started dating smoothly, leading to a quick marriage. Compared to the beautiful Susan, I'm not exactly handsome, but Susan had a fondness for me. I worked as a writer, handling various types of articles as a contract job, which were published on websites and magazines. Before I met her in person, Susan was aware that I was working as a writer. Susan regularly checked my works, and thankfully, she developed an interest in me. I think you definitely have talent, Mark. I will work hard to make your dream come true. Susan always said this to me. Yes. Even though I was a writer, when I was married to Susan, I was just juggling a few freelance jobs, not possessing enough financial power to be the breadwinner of the family. I had wanted to be a full-fledged writer since I was 24. Before that, I worked as a regular full-time employee. Before I got married to Susan, I was barely getting by, living off my savings, but after we got married, Susan worked hard as a full-time employee and supported our household. Susan is a smart and excellent woman, with outstanding knowledge in IT, and she was doing a great job at her company. I was taking advantage of Susan's actions, and while I was doing my writing work at home, I also did all the housework. I thought I would do the housework perfectly since I couldn't get results at work. I'm home. Today's dinner looks delicious. Thank you, Mark. No, it's only natural for me to do this because you're working hard outside, Susan. I'm really grateful to you. I said that and shared a dinner table with Susan. The time I spent with Susan was really fun, and every moment was sparkling. The day will definitely come when your talent, Mark, will be recognized. I'm really cheering for you, Susan. I was moved by Susan's words. When you're a writer working at home, there were many times when you honestly felt like giving up. This job requires you to be perfect in solitude, and no one is by your side to tell you the correct answer. Back then, I was unable to get enough work and was losing confidence. But because Susan was there, I managed to keep myself from breaking down. Susan, thank you. I can be positive because you are here. I'll keep working hard as a writer. I will always support you, Mark. We continued our married life in this way, always respecting each other. I really loved Susan, and I wanted to be with her forever. But my feelings were overturned by a certain incident. One day, while I was out shopping for dinner, I bumped into an old acquaintance. His name was Peter, a man at my age who had also attended the mixer where I first met Susan. Mark, is that you, shopping on a weekday? Are you off today? Peter, in his crisp suit, asked me. He must have been returning from making sales calls. Peter, a handsome elite who worked in sales at a large corporation, was a highly competent man. At that time, I was out shopping in a plain tracksuit, and feeling a bit embarrassed, I answered, "Haha, I guess you could say every day is like a day off for me." So, does that mean Susan is the one working? Yeah, I'm not making much at the moment, so that's how it is. How pathetic. I didn't immediately understand what Peter meant. He let out a heavy sigh, looked at me with a disappointed face, and continued. I fell in love with Susan at that mixer. She was someone I admired. But Susan didn't even glance at me. She chose you. If you had something attractive about yourself, I could have accepted it, but now, I'm disappointed. I was shocked by Peter's words. I had never imagined that he had feelings for Susan. Moreover, I never thought that such a mild-mannered and gentlemanly guy would berate me like this. Despite being deeply shaken, I managed to muster a forced smile and responded, although I might not have smiled properly due to my inner turmoil. Yeah, Susan is really a wife too good for me. If you understand that, why don't you step back? Peter gave me a cold look. It was a look of contempt from a fellow man. Susan is really pitiful. I bet she gets sympathy from her colleagues because her husband is like you. Susan is such a beautiful and wonderful woman. I still believe I could have made her happier than you, Mark. If you wish for her happiness, I recommend that you realize your place, even now. With that, Peter briskly walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling as though I had been struck on the head with a blunt object. I don't remember how I got home. But even after getting home, Peter's words kept flashing back in my mind, filling me with an unbearable feeling. It forced me to confront the inadequacy and inferiority I had vaguely felt as a husband. I have been married to Susan for 2 years, but as a writer, I haven't made any progress. My days are still filled with small jobs, and despite submitting my work to various companies hoping for a formal contract, but I'm getting no responses. I keep saying, I'll get results one day, but in reality, nothing changes. It's one thing to chase after a dream that might not come true by myself, but is it right to drag Susan along? Susan herself supports me and trusts me. But can I take responsibility if I fail to meet her expectations? Before I knew it, I was filled with self-pity, and tears welled up in my eyes. I'm home. Wait, Mark, what's going on? Susan, surprised by my unusual mood, rushed to my side. Susan is always so kind to me, and does so much for me. Despite this, I can't do anything for her. In that moment, I painfully realized this truth. Susan, let's get a divorce. The moment I said that, Susan looked at me with a startled expression. Oh, Mark, what happened? I'm no good. I can't make Susan happy. Susan seemed like she wanted to say something, but instead she just nodded gently and said, I understand. Maybe she could tell from the tears I shed. And so, in our 2nd year of marriage, we put a period to our life together. It was a divorce we both agreed to, so the proceedings went smoothly. Even at our last goodbye, Susan smiled and cheered me on. She looked so refreshed, and I knew then that this separation was the right thing. Susan is a serious person, and she must have felt obliged to support me, but at the same time, she must have felt burdened. Mark, promise me this at least. I'll be waiting for you to succeed as a writer. Even at this parting, Susan was kind. Feeling her considerateness, I let out a small stream of tears as I said goodbye. Yeah, I'll keep on writing. After parting with Susan, I dedicated myself more to writing than ever before. Before, when Susan was around, we would go out as a couple, but now I am truly alone. Thankfully, I have plenty of time. I wrote and wrote as if I were possessed. Sometimes when I felt like giving up, I would think alternately of Peter and Susan. I wanted to become a man who could make Peter, who looked down on me, look up to me, and I was determined to fulfill my promise to Susan. By doing this, I was able to motivate myself and make more achievement in my work than ever before. My writing improved and I started to get higher-paying jobs. Then I thought I'd enter a contest in a web media, so I found a promising contest in a magazine and applied. As a result, I was hired by a major web media company. I was going to be employed as a full-time writer, so I could expect a stable life, promotions, and raises from now on. Most importantly, I was told that I might be able to take on assignments from publishing companies, and I might even be asked to travel overseas for cover stories. I wanted to write various articles and send them out to the world. It was a moment when my dream came true. I did it. I shouted with joy in my empty room. I wish I could have shared this moment with Susan. It will soon be 2 years since I divorced her. I'm still alone, but I'm sure she, the charming woman, has already been blessed with a new good encounter. For me, that's the greatest joy. There are plenty of men who are more suitable for Susan than me, a cowardly man. Yes, like that Peter. She can choose as many handsome and wealthy men as she wants. I have to move on too. With that thought, I said goodbye to Susan again in my heart, but later I was to be hit by an unexpected situation. A few days later, I went directly to the major web media company that had hired me. Normally, since I'm a writer, I can work remotely, but from now on, I need to have meetings with the editor in charge at the office. So, first of all, I had to greet all the employees. And after the greeting and the tour of the company, a welcome party for me was held. I was truly grateful for such a warm welcome. After a long while, I put on a suit and, nervously, I set foot into the company. I'm nervous. The company exuded a modern feel, its marble floors sparkling and shining. I was immediately overwhelmed by the stylish and contemporary office. "All right, Mr. Johnson, this way." Led by the young president in his 40s, I stepped into the PC room where everyone was waiting. I am Mark Johnson, who has been appointed as an exclusive writer for this company. In the midst of introducing myself, I was left speechless. Unbelievably, the woman I thought I would never see again was standing in front of me. "What? Why is Susan here?" As I expressed my surprise and widened my eyes, Susan was also taken aback. I never dreamed of meeting my ex-wife, whom I had divorced 2 years ago, in such a circumstance. But I couldn't stand there silently any longer in front of everyone. Though I still have much to learn, I look forward to working with all of you. I finished my faltering greeting and bowed deeply. Even while everyone was giving a warm applause, my mind was filled with thoughts of Susan. Why was she working at this company? The president later gave a detailed explanation about the company's facilities and system, but I regretfully was somewhat preoccupied. The encounter earlier was too shocking. In the evening, a welcome party for me was held, and we went to a restaurant with 30 company members. During the party, I asked the president about Susan. The president, who was in a good mood from drinking, talked eloquently about Susan. Yes, we had hunted Susan because she was so competent and made her an executive of our company. Becoming an executive all of a sudden, that's impressive. Susan was working in web marketing at her previous company, and attracting customers on the web is her forte. Also, she had excellent grades in the Department of Humanities at a national university, so of course she has excellent writing skills and talent as an editor. In fact, she's really standing out in our company. I'm really glad we hired her. Just as the president said, Susan had excellent grades at the Department of Humanities at a national university. She had told me herself that when she was job hunting, she struggled to decide whether to work at a publishing company or an IT company. But in this company, she can showcase both of her skills, which is perfect for her. As I was thinking this, Susan came over to me. I was relieved because I was worried she might avoid me. "Mark, it's been a long time." I was surprised. "I never expected to meet you again like this." "Me neither." Seeing Susan up close after a long time, I was unexpectedly nervous. Even after 2 years apart, she was still as charming as ever. To be able to talk so naturally again. I never even dreamed of this. But really, congratulations. Our web media gets a lot of various work frequently. I'm very honored to be able to work with you, Mark. I look forward to working with you in the future. Same here, I look forward to it. And so we began our relationship as a good business partner. The company's culture suited me, and I was able to concentrate on writing in a comfortable and enjoyable environment. I visited the office regularly for work meetings and actively communicated with Susan. She was such a competent woman and gave me precise instructions. Mark, last month's article was a hit in terms of traffic. There was a lot of feedback from people wanting to read more, so I'm thinking of turning it into a series. That's great news. Is there anything I should pay attention to? In this way, we meticulously discussed our work. Every time we compared our ideas, the results visibly improved, and being evaluated directly like this also motivated me. Honestly, I never dreamed that a day would come when I could interact with Susan in this way. I used to respect Susan, but I was always riddled with complexes. Even though Susan was cheering me on, I continued to feel pathetic in my constant anxiety and feelings of inferiority. But now it's different. I have confidence in myself now, and I no longer feel inferior as I used to. Susan herself must feel this change in the air, and I can say with certainty that our relationship feels better than before. Although we have been apart for 2 years, it seems that what we cultivated during that time was not in vain. I think I still love Susan. Half a year since I met with Susan again. I could feel my affection for Susan growing day by day. But I was the one who brought up the divorce, and there's no way Susan feels the same about me. Even from the perspective of her ex-husband, Susan is now sparkled. Susan, who was successful at work, was very attractive and radiant, a figure of admiration among the male employees. The kindness Susan shows me might just be for work, and in reality, I'm probably just a thing of the past. While my feelings for Susan grew stronger, I was trying to convince myself to give up, but an incident awaited us that would greatly shake our relationship. Here's to the growth of our company. Cheers! At the president's toast, all the employees raised their glasses and started toasting each other. Today was the regularly scheduled company-wide drinking party. Coincidentally, Susan was sitting next to me today, which made my heart beat fast. Unlike her serious suit style at work, Susan was cute in a dress today and had heavier makeup. I hadn't seen Susan like this in a while, and while I felt a fresh thrill, I also felt that Susan probably already had a new partner. There's no way such a wonderful woman would be left alone. I felt a little sting in my heart and fought to drown my feelings in alcohol, drinking at a high pace. But surprisingly, Susan next to me was drinking at an even higher pace. Was Susan always such a heavy drinker? Another whiskey and soda, please. Are you sure you're okay? Your face is all red. I'm fine. I'm not drunk. Susan said so, but she was clearly drunk. The drinking party started at 6 p.m., and by the second hour, Susan was completely drunk. After that, the other employees got excited about going to the second party, and Susan was saying, "Me too," and tried to follow them. But there was no way she could walk the streets safely in heels with being so drunk. Seeing her like this, I decided to take her home. Fortunately, the other members were too excited about the second party to tease us. I planned to go home as soon as I sent Susan safely to her house. But suddenly Susan started feeling unwell and turned pale, shivering. It appears that the drawbacks of drinking alcohol at a high pace have now caught up to her. From this bar to Susan's house it takes about an hour, but if we head to my apartment, it's only about a 15-minute ride. I immediately hailed a cab and headed straight to my apartment. It's unusual for Susan to end up like this. Thinking this, I was taking care of her in the cab. Susan, who's usually calm and composed, was completely drunk and out of her senses. Upon arriving at my apartment, I put Susan to bed. Susan was already fast asleep, and I kept watch over her the entire time. I never thought I'd see the day Susan would come back here. Naturally, all the days I spent with her began to resurface one after another in my mind. While cherishing those memories, I also felt a sort of melancholy. When she wakes up, she'll be leaving here promptly. We were supposed to be over, yet that fact felt unbearably sad to me. As I was indulging in these indescribable feelings, she quietly woke up. Looking at the clock, nearly 3 hours had passed since Susan came to my place. She had been lying quietly for a while, and it seemed like the alcohol had somewhat worn off. Susan was looking around the room wide-eyed. Why am I here? I brought you here because you were drunk and intoxicated, Susan. I wanted to take you home, but you didn't seem well. I'm sorry, that was irresponsible of me. No, it's all right, but you should avoid drinking like that. It's especially dangerous for a woman. Here, have some water. Just as I was about to hand Susan a bottle of water, she clung to me. I was momentarily frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. At that moment, Susan was quietly shedding big, round tears. When you were sitting next to me, I was so nervous. I drank that much to hide my nervousness. But you're really kind. Susan. Hearing Susan's words, I was stunned. I didn't expect Susan to be conscious of me in that way. I like you, Mark. I realized that after rereading your articles, the one on nursing I read before I met you at the mixer. Listening to Susan's story reminded me of her father, who passed away after we'd got married. Susan's father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at a young age. Until he was admitted to a nursing home, Susan and her mill had been taking care of him at home. From my early 20s until I was 30, I was caught between work and caregiving. Honestly, I was exhausted. I despaired at my seemingly endless life, and I even began to resent my father. I hated myself for feeling that way about my father, whom I loved so much. Back then, Susan had apparently been weeping day in and day out. I couldn't possibly blame her when I heard that story back then. It's not easy for a young woman to give up romance and private life to focus on caregiving. Susan started reminiscing about those times. When I was feeling down about my father, I came across your writing, Mark, and it saved me. Not just the nursing articles, but your other articles were also truly wonderful. That's why I was really happy to meet you at the mixer. Saying that, Susan looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. The intensity of her expression echoed deeply within my heart. I was despairing of life, but just by glancing over the words that you, Mark, put together, I felt my will to live bubbling back up. There are such wonderful things in this world. Even when I was swamped with caregiving and couldn't go out, if I opened my laptop, I could encounter the world you had painted. You can't imagine how much that saved me. I was deeply touched to hear that Susan had been so moved by my articles. Thank you, but I feel like I've only caused trouble for you. No, that's not true. My happiness lies in seeing your dreams come true, Mark. There are definitely people out there who will be saved by your writing, just like me. I parted ways with you with a smile that day, but in reality, I was crying inside. If my presence added to your pressure, I'm really sorry. That's not true, because you were there, Susan. I could keep writing. Saying that, I held Susan tightly. We may have misunderstood and passed each other by, but we can start over from here. As we spent the night together, we felt more connected than ever before. This was the first time either of us had experienced such unity of feelings. Thus, We reaffirmed our love for each other and decided to restart our relationship. Ideally, I wanted to remarry immediately, but a new challenge presented itself to us. Wait, I will be in charge of an interview articles overseas. The president's words left me shocked, and as I froze, he continued to speak as if to say, "Aren't you thrilled?" "Yes, a major publisher wants you on their team. They'll cover all costs, and it'll surely boost your career. You get to travel to various countries for a year, gaining plenty of experience. Isn't it a dream job?" While it was an attractive offer, it meant being away from Susan for a year. I was conflicted about whether to go or not, but Susan welcomed the offer with a smile. "That's amazing. It's a valuable experience to travel around the world. I'd love to read about the world as seen through Mark's eyes." Susan's words took me by surprise. At the same time, I felt foolish for having worried so much. That's right. Distance and time are no issue. Even if there are periods when we can't see each other, as long as there's love and writing, we can overcome anything. "Yeah, you're right. I'll become a bigger man in preparation for our marriage, Susan." And so, I accepted the offer and set off on a one-year research trip. Susan was there at the airport to see me off, a glittering engagement ring on her right hand. When I returned, I intended to present her with a large wedding ring for her left hand. "Take care." "Yeah, I'll do my best." With smiles on our faces, we began walking towards a bright future.